Well, good morning, everyone. My name's David Wojcik. I'm the president and CEO of your Mississauga Board of Trade. Thanks for joining us today for our virtual From the Corner Office fireside chat. Today, we are in conversation with a CEO's CEO, John Wilson, the founder of CEO Global Network and a good business colleague of mine. It's going to be a really, very interesting conversation today. Before we start the event today, I'd like to quickly review the virtual event protocols. All attendees will remain on mute as we are recording this event. A Q&A session will occur during our fireside chat today, so we encourage you to engage in the conversation and be part of it. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. The questions are only visible to MBOT staff and panelists, and the staff will review all questions that are asked, and we'll do our best to get your question answered today. I'd like to thank our From the Corner office sponsors, Kaiser Mason Ball and Gallagher Insurance, for their continued support of this C-Level series. Now, to officially introduce our guest and say a few words, I'd like to welcome from our board of directors and the managing partner of Kaiser Mason Ball, Amy Delisle. Amy?
Hi, hello, good morning, everybody. I'm really looking forward to hearing from John in a couple of minutes, but first I wanted to say hello and tell you a little bit about myself. As David mentioned, my name is Amy Delisle, and I'm the managing partner of Kaiser Mason Ball, or KMB Law, which is a full-service business firm. We have offices in Mississauga and Burlington, and my practice specifically focuses on franchising, retail, and distribution work. So, but the firm certainly has lawyers to help in every aspect of your business life from start to finish. So now on to John. John Wilson is the founder and CEO of CEO Global Network, an exclusive CEO peer group organization that leads opportunities for learning and development through monthly group meetings, customized one-to-one mentoring, and focused curriculum and engaging events. I will say that I am a member of CEO Global Network, and my group is fantastic. It has been a fundamental piece of getting through the past year and a bit now. So thanks to John and CEO Global. So John has built and led successful 9-figure businesses in both Canada and the United States. John understands what it takes to lead at the top, which is why he is so invested in giving back. Over the years, John has personally coached hundreds of high-performing CEOs to greater success and is dedicated to fulfilling the mission of CEO Global Network to significantly improve the success and lives of CEOs and executives, their families, and their companies. John currently sits on the board of directors of Excellence Canada and is the author of the acclaimed business book, Great CEOs and How They Are Made. Please join me in welcoming John Wilson.
Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate that introduction. That was just fantastic, and it's great to have you as part of CEO Global Network. Again, thanks for that introduction. And just a comment on the Mississauga Board of Trade. Last time, David, you and I were in the same room. Was at CHSI, and it's got to be a year or so ago. And that was a big day for me, by the way. I was invited to come and talk about the power of peer groups. And it was a big day because I met 3 people that day that had a big impact on the future of CEO Global Network. One of them was Linda Kern, who is, I met a little prior to that, but she was organizing the event. Also met Jamel Lindo that morning, who is now a emotional intelligence coach with us, and also met Tim Chugg, Epic Training, and his dad, right? And so, the power of the Mississauga Board of Trade, because all those people play a big role in CEO Global Network. Linda is our director of membership. So it's just fantastic. Thanks to you, David, and all the work that you do at Mississauga Board of Trade.
Well, thanks, John. As I've said many times, I accept all the compliments. I deserve none. It's a great team that we have, and of course, connecting people is something that we're very proud of. You know what it's like to interact with people on a regular basis, and the length of time it takes to build those types of relationships, where you can make those introductions on a very on a comfortable level. So
100%.
let's get into your story, John, because we're here to talk about you and how you were able to get this incredible organization off the ground. Of course, over the years, people might think, oh, well, that's an overnight success, and it, as many people would feel. But I think that you were actually the lightning rod for many groups that have since spun off from your concept. So take us back in history a little bit and help us understand what was the impetus to starting CEO Global.
Well, that's a great question, David. And what was the impetus? If we go back, I'll tell you a story about a time when I was probably in the loneliest and most fearful time of my career. Not necessarily in my life, but in my business life. And imagine yourself all alone in a dark hotel room in Dallas, Texas, okay? A Fairfield Inn, not a Fairmont, a Fairfield Inn with jets flying overhead every 5 minutes close to the Dallas airport. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pacing the rug, the thin rug in that room, because I had just received a phone call from my biggest supplier. I was running a business, fastest growing oil business, fleet fueling business in the Southwest United States. I was living in California at the time, and one of the challenges with building a business quickly and scaling is cash. And so the phone call was, if you don't wire the money this afternoon, we're going to cut you off. And, who do I turn to? And who's going to be the next to call? And I'm between a rock and a hard place. And that was a defining moment for me, because I did get out from behind that rock and hard place, thanks to some people who am I going to call? Who am I going to call to help with this? I got a payroll to meet. I got a payroll to meet coming up. And I was able to get out of that situation. I was able to build a good, strong company because someone put a hand out to me. And it was that experience that said, when I get an opportunity, I'm going to spend my life making sure that no other, leader ever gets into that position. And so that's what CEO Global Network is all about, is to help people. We're a peer group organization that helps people not get into that hotel room in Dallas, Texas, and feel so alone. And that's where the mentors come in as well. I mean, it's that really is what spurred me on. I didn't start CEO Global Network at that time. I continued on to build the business, sold the business, eventually moved from California back home to Toronto. And then started working with CEOs and learning. I learned more from them than they have ever learned from me. But that was one of the real defining moments for me in my career, was just the feeling of loneliness and the fear of leading a business. And whether you're running a big corporation that's public, or whether you're running your own business, you're gonna feel the feelings I felt. And so we exist to try to help people not get into that situation.
Well, it's a true entrepreneurial spirit when entrepreneurs create solutions out of experiences that they've had, where they have a problem, they don't know where to turn to fix it, so they end up fixing it themselves.
Yep.
You mentioned that you stayed with that company for years afterwards. Building it, getting out of trouble, selling it off. Now CEO Global it's a well-oiled machine. I mean, you have
Fantastic.
You've got a system, you've got protocols, you know exactly what you're doing. In the initial stages, was it like building and flying an airplane at the same time as you were when you started that first CEO Global group? Tell us about that.
Well, I did have a vision, mate, because when I lived in California, I was part of a peer group in Orange County. So, we lived there as a family for 12 years. And so So I was familiar with peer groups, and so had a vision in terms of, I'm a student of the great game of business, and I had a vision on how we could do it better than anything I'd ever seen. And so I did have a roadmap, David. I kind of knew what I wanted to do. So I had the design for the plane, before stepping out of base camp to on the journey. But I got to tell you this, the success of CEO Global Network is because of people who had faith in me, right? And I could name you a long list of people who said, John, we're going to help you do this. Like, we're going to help you achieve your vision for this, and we're going to support you. So in the early days, I had a core of people who really sort of shared the vision, if you will. And I'm talking CEOs who wanted to, be part of this and who wanted to really see it work. And I was their mentor in the early days. We're talking circa, I started CEO Global Network in 2008. I was working with CEOs well before that, but kind of formalized it into CEO Global Network in 2008. At the age of 67, by the way, I said, here's a better way to do it. Let's build this organization. And so that was kind of it. I did have a plan, David, and I had people around me that said, we're with you, John. We got your back. We got your back on this, and it meant so much. And those people are with, many of them are still with CEO Global Network. A number of them have retired and so on, but many are still with CEO Global Network, which is
many companies, John, that are started, they start off down one path, but as things evolve, they will adjust and move. So is CEO Global that we see today, some 13 years later, is it the same structure, same organization as 2008, or how has it morphed over the years?
Well, the basic core is the same, David. Like, we do the peer group meetings and we do the one-on-one mentoring. It has, certainly through COVID. It's we're doing everything virtually now, and we're bringing in speakers virtually and that type of thing. But the basic product is the same. However, thanks to our members who are constantly giving us, our team, feedback on how we can get better, we have developed some new things along the way. One of them is we've developed a curriculum. So we have a curriculum that is part of our program, and the curriculum focuses on emotional intelligence and self-awareness, building and leading an A team, and execution of a great plan. In other words, developing a culture of accountability, because at the end of the day, you got to get results, right? And that came about by our members, our CEOs we work with, saying, hey, we'd like to get more of that leadership curriculum, and could you develop it for us? And we did. And then the other thing I want to mention is and what I do is I go around to all the groups in CEO Global Network on a regular basis and say, if you were me, what's the number one thing you would do to improve the value to you? And so a couple of years ago, we heard a number of times, we need to figure out a way to take this deeper into our organizations. It's all on our shoulders. We come back from these meetings, we learn these leadership things, and we come back to our companies and we have to sort of, pass it along. Is there a way that CEO Global Network could pass it along? And so we developed our leadership training program, and we're probably the end of the year 3, going into year 4 on our global leadership training program, which is really designed for the direct report to the CEO and the high performers deeper in the organization. So it does evolve. There's no question about it. It evolves. Our CEO roundtables. We have a CEO roundtable every week on the common denominator of people in CEO Global Network is they're learners. They're lifelong learners. They want to get better. They're always looking for ways to get better. So we always have a thought leader every week come in and gives our CEOs and their teams an opportunity to learn and get better. So those are some of the things that we've done, since we left base camp back in 2008.
I want to remind the audience that engage in the conversation. If you have a question that you want to ask John, please put it in the Q&A box, and we will get to it as we move through the conversation. John, let's go back a few years, and many people have said that it's our experiences over our lifetime that actually set us up for the job that we have at any point in time. And so let's go back in your history. You mentioned that that you came back to Toronto, which is your hometown. So what was it like growing up in your life? Like what was your home life like through your formative years? Who were your heroes? Who were your mentors? Who made you the man you are today?
Well, it's a good question, and I mentioned I was born in Toronto and but grew up in Hamilton. Okay, so I'm a steel town guy, really. From a fairly early age, like preschool, we moved over to Hamilton, and so if I think there's a couple of things that really impacted me and made me sort of who I am today. Number one. I was fortunate enough to be born into a very loving family, right? And I didn't realize how important that was, quite frankly, until I got older. And and people would say, "Do you realize how lucky you were?" But there we were growing up in Hamilton. My sister and I had a younger sister. And, we just had I would say, it was tough. We're talking about just post-war era, right? We're talking post-war. We moved around Hamilton a number of times until we settled in. My mom and dad got to the point where we could settle in, and we did that. So I think that had a huge impact on who I am today, right? I had quality time with family right out of the get-go, an extended family that cared very much. Probably the defining moment, though, in terms of who I am today and who I've been for a big part of my life, is when I was 18 years old, and up to that time, by the way, I was I was just a carefree guy, right? I played hockey, football, baseball. I was just having a wonderful life, and then my sister got sick. Okay, my sister was 4 years younger than me. She gave me a little trophy that I still have that said on it world's greatest football player, which I certainly was not. But when I was 18, she was 14, she got sick, and she passed away. And that had a huge impact on our family. It had a huge impact on me. I remember passing my dad on the stairs at our home in Stony Creek, and my dad said, your sister's very sick, John. You may want to take things a little more seriously. Well, since that time, I have valued time so much, and like I just. And it's not that I'm certainly not working all the time, but I'm aware of time all the time, and so, and how precious it is. And I'm sure there are a lot of people on this call that have gone through that something like that, and so you can understand that the impact that has. And so that was at 18, had a huge impact on me. And then because I became serious from that point forward, I became serious. About life and just how precious it is, right? And so and I watched my mom and dad go through that, and just how tough it was for them, and our love deepened around it. So the other thing around business, David, was I met my wife in high school. We met in high school, and her father, my wife Lynn's father, was an executive in business. And I used to go over and we used to babysit while they would go out, he had a lot of business books, business records at that time. And I remember picking up a record called The Strangest Secret. It was by Earl Nightingale. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but you probably have, David.
Yeah.
And Strangest Secret. And I remember playing it and then playing it again and playing it again. And so Ernie Milligan, okay, is a guy that had a big impact on me. He was a very successful executive. He also flew Lancasters in the Second World War at the age of 19. Okay. And he, in addition to my dad, he was a real hero to me. And so I learned a lot from him around business, and he was a bit of a role model for me in the early days. Right. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, David. I'm sorry, but
no, not at all. Not at all.
Those were defining moments for me.
A question from the audience. People would like to know what's the breadth and scope of CEO Global. Are you strictly based here in Canada? Is it North America? How far do the arms of CEO Global reach?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, and so the answer to that is that we have a global reach, but the global reach really comes from the CEOs who are part of it, and the fact that they're doing business all over the world. The majority of our membership is in Ontario. We do have a group. We have a great group in Montreal. We have, we're building groups in Western Canada. We've got 2 leaders in Calgary. We've just announced a new leader in Vancouver, and we have a group leader in San Francisco, a group leader in Orlando, and thanks to the virtual world that we're living in today. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday with someone in Beijing who's interested in being CEO Global Network in Beijing, and we've talked to people in Europe. But most of our membership today, David, is Canadian, and we've made a couple of attempts to go into the U.S. A couple of years ago, we attempted to go into the West Coast of the U.S., and it's all about the people. Business is all about the people, and so we just didn't have the right person, and quite honestly, and to take it that way. And so, but to answer the question, short answer to the question is we're primarily Canadian today. We've got some footprint in the U.S., and my goal is to be global, and by that I mean significant presence in 5 countries in my lifetime. That's our vision, right? Is to do that, and we will.
Now you've held senior positions, as you mentioned. You were leading an oil company down in Dallas. Many people ask CEOs over the years that we've been doing this series, and we started this series back in 2006, 2007. So that's how long I've been interviewing CEOs, and of course through all the shows that I've done. The question that I love to ask is about work-life balance, and some CEOs have said, one said it's not about work-life balance, it's more about work-life juggle, and the other one said it's like a pendulum. Sometimes it's way over here, and then sometimes it's way over here. You're working very hard, and then sometimes you get with your family, but rarely does it ever rest right in the middle. What's your perspective on work-life balance, and how important is it?
It's absolutely critical, and I think it's absolutely critical. I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and Amy mentioned it in the intro. Great CEOs Now They're Made. The 7 imperatives. One of the imperatives is great CEOs are a success in all dimensions of their lives. Great leaders are a success in all dimensions of their lives. You can't be one-dimensional. But I agree with you, David, that the pendulum swings. It can swing back and forth depending on what's going on in your life, eh? Mm-hmm. And both business life, family life, personal life. But I really think that we need to figure this. You need to figure it out. I remember a CEO meeting that I was chairing a number of years ago, and the fellow that was the host said, 16 CEOs around the table, and the fellow said, if you people can't figure out how to run your business in 3 days a week, you're not successful. And and boy, did a tremendous debate ensue, right? Because, I mean, we had like a 30 something, a 35 something saying, hey, look at, like, I don't want to work 3 days a week. I love what I do. I want to keep going. But, there's different, so work-life balance, different things to different people, right? But I think the key here is you've got to take care of yourself. And, one of my favorite stories is about a guy by the name of Derek Bullen, who owns a company called SI Systems out of Calgary, a very successful guy. But if you go back in his history, and this is public knowledge because there was an article in a in one of the Canadian business magazines about it, and he started by being a workaholic and it not working. Like the relationships were all frayed. He wasn't making any money. His business wasn't growing. He'd bobbing along the bottom. And his mentor said, look, why don't you take a time out and figure out whether, you can run a business and have a life too. Well, he did figure out how to do that. And the way he did that is he got better people around him. When you see somebody really, out of balance too much, quite often, not always, it's because they haven't got the right people with them. And one of the blessings I have, we have a fantastic team at CEO Global Network, and hundreds of CEOs who are taking care and making sure Wilson gets balanced, right?
Yeah.
It's the work-life balance, something I struggled with at different parts of my career, right? I mean, there were times when I went, I just was burning it at both ends. And, at some point you got to figure it out before you become the monk who sold his Ferrari, right? Have the heart attack in the courtroom, right? If I'm remembering that right. So, you want to figure it out before the crisis happens, because eventually the crisis will happen. I mean, I have one-on-one mentoring meetings with CEOs every month. And the first question we ask is, what's the most important thing we should talk about today? What's the highest best use of our time? Well, sometimes it's, I need to talk to you about this relationship, like the relationship with my spouse, relationship with my son, my middle son, my daughter. You really got to watch that, particularly if you've got a huge passion for what you do, because, and this is, I relate to this. If you're excited about what you do and you love it, you've got to deliberately work balance into your life. Like just put it into your calendar. Like, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna spend time with my spouse or whatever. Like, yeah, you want to, yeah. It's I think it's extremely important. And I think that you just got to figure it out and figure out what it is for you and those who you love, because it's not just about you; it's about those around you.
Well, I know that work-life balance went right out the window on March 16th of 2020. And it didn't matter which end you were on, whether you were on the good side of that announcement or the bad side of the announcement, whether your business took off because of COVID, or whether your business went in the toilet because of COVID. It certainly set people's work-life balance on its head. John, you mentioned about surrounding yourself with good people. Why do you think CEOs don't do that? Because it's the right thing to do. It makes sense. It takes an enormous amount of pressure off of the CEO so they can get out of the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And they can focus on what they should be focusing on, which is, strategic direction and continuous improvement and helping their people become better people, because that's really our job, is to make people around us better. So why do so many CEOs not do it?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with ego, don't you? There's the genius with 1,000 followers, like all the answers, and so, I think that has a lot to do with it, that it is ego. I don't want to let go. Nobody can do it as good as I can. I had someone say to me many years ago, like, if someone else does it 80% as well as you do, you're still going to be ahead of the game because you're going to be able to do your job, right? But I think also in some cases, David, the CEO doesn't know what their job is. they kind of built the business if we're talking entrepreneur, or if we're talking someone that's running someone else's assets, another CEO. They came up through operations or finance or marketing sales, and they get to that top spot, and then they're like, I don't understand the job description here, but I know I know I was good at what I was doing. And so they tend to, kind of get sucked back in there. And then they don't get an A player in the job, because who wants to be micromanaged? Like nobody, right? Like,
Right.
so
Well, John, that's a really good point. So let's talk about what is the job? What is the CEO's job? What would be on the job description? I mentioned a few things, that
Yeah.
What I view my job is keep your head up. Of course, we're dealing with board of directors. We're dealing with strategy, maybe working certainly on relationships and partnerships with other CEOs.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement of the organization, helping your people be better. What would you add to the list?
Well, I mean, you've hit some really important ones, but I think a real important piece is keeping the vision alive and bringing it alive, and having a vision that people can really relate to. I think that's a big part of the CEO job, is to make sure that, hey, people know where you're going. They can get excited about knowing where they're going, knowing where the company's going. They know where they fit in that. Right? They know where they fit. People know where they fit. It's up to the CEO to make sure people know that. And I think it's also up to the CEO to be real. I mean, someone once asked me, like, during this COVID, like, has it changed in terms of being a CEO and stuff? And well, it hasn't changed, but you better be transparent and real. Like, this is no time to have rose-colored glasses on. You gotta, like, this is a crisis. Like, don't tell us it's not, right? And so I think a key thing is to make sure that the vision is clear, and that people really relate to it. I think there needs to be a higher purpose to the vision. If you take a look at the most successful companies, there's a higher purpose to it. That's important. So the CEO's job is to keep that alive and really, really bring people around that. But beyond that, David, I think one of the key things for the CEO is to develop the people around them, help develop the people around them. Top performers, A players, I have a favorite phrase, when the learning stops, the looking starts. So, you want to create a learning organization, right? A learning organization where people are always challenged. They're learning more. They're really enjoying what they're doing. And that gets to this other piece that I think is critically important for the CEO. Spend time, quality time with people. And that means one-on-one time. So, let's just take, your direct reports. If you've got a team of 8 people, you got to spend time one-on-one with each one of those people through, every month. And we encourage all of our members to take a 2-hour one-on-one meeting with every direct report every month. And talk about what's the most important thing we should talk about today, and then talk about the numbers, talk about the strategic initiatives, talk about their teams and what they want to get better at. I mean, it's a valuable. Most people want more time with the person that they report to. And so that's really important for the CEO, is to make that time. I've had CEOs say, I could never find the time to do that. Well, if you find the time to do that, it'll make it time. Right? It'll make it time, because you'll be aligned, right? That's the other thing. That's the other thing in the job description of CEO, is to make sure that that the organization is aligned, that people are aligned, and that we know where we stand and where we're going. So, and how we can get you there. So those are some of the things, David.
Let's talk about people, because that especially over the last year, we have found many organizations have found who is aligned with the corporate vision, who was supportive, who was really in there as a team player. Jack Welch had a theory that he would take the bottom 10% of the performers and kick them out of General Electric every year. That's what he did. Do you subscribe to that theory, that there should be a constant culling of the pond, so to speak, uh, in order to fill the pond with better performers?
Well, no, I don't, but I also don't think you should carry people who aren't performing. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think as leaders we have an obligation to really understand what's going on with people. The bigger the organization gets, there can be a tendency to, the further away from, the person you can get sometimes. But I don't believe in like the bottom 10%'s got to go, right? That's also a Pattison deal. And I think, everybody can contribute. And many times the reason someone is not contributing is because nobody really explained what the expectations were. Right? Like sometimes, you just assume they know what to do. Well, they don't know what to do. I think the other important point, David, too, is that if someone is having a challenge in this particular role, they can be an outstanding player in another role. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's up to us to be as kind of the arbiter, if you will, of talent, and really think through rather than being knee jerk about, hey, bottom 10% must go. I think it's how do we help these people succeed? I mean, it is possible for everybody to succeed in an organization, 100%, right?
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that there are times when, there just has to be a decision made about somebody that, it's not the right fit, right? We've tried. There have to be consequences, right? But by the same token, I really feel that, you gotta spend the time to make sure that you've given that person, the right opportunity. And and in my experience, most CEOs go the extra mile. In some cases they go a bit too long. And I'm not saying you leave somebody in a position, that's not performing. I think what you got to do is take a hard look at that and have the courage to say, it's not working here, but we might have this opportunity over here that could be a good opportunity for you. And then, you can't always find that depending on the size of the company. Smaller companies have challenges with that because you only got so many positions. But I really think you got to give people a chance, and
well, I think
try to find a way.
subscribing to that one-on-one meeting with your direct reports. It's something that we've done at the Board of Trade for several years now. Having that. Some you have weekly with, some it's bi-weekly. I know with my direct reports, it's always a bi-weekly meeting. It does a couple of things. It helps us correct the path and keep people aligned on a regular basis rather than doing the annual performance review. The other thing it does is it gets rid of the annual performance review.
Yeah, and how good is that?
Because nobody likes that. I don't know anybody that likes
nobody likes that. No.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody.
But along the lines of helping people transition, that you can make those little course corrections along the way that, this isn't working for this person. How do we help them become better? Or the ultimate, which is sometimes it's better to help them transition into another career with another company because they're not happy with you. You're not happy with them. So why not help them be happy somewhere else? And sometimes that's the best thing you can do for people. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that 100%. Patty McCord, we had Patty McCord to speak. She's Netflix person, right? She developed the slide deck, the famous slide deck for Netflix. And, she said, sometimes the brilliant jerk has got to go, right? The brilliant jerk has got to go. And they had this brilliant person at Netflix and they said, we can't put up with this, why don't you go work somewhere where you'll be happy rather than be a jerk? And Al Mulally talks about that too, right? Al Mulally ran Ford and Boeing, and he talks about the arrogance factor, right? And, you never want people on your team that are arrogant. And the opposite of arrogance is humility. And, humility is important, right? Humble, hardworking, and smart is a great combination, right? So yeah, it's really important. It's critical.
When it comes to the longevity of a CEO, I've heard varying degrees or varying stories about how long a CEO should be in a position. And of course, it will make a difference if if you started the company, it's your company and that's your retirement plan. You may plan to be there for 20, 30, 40 years. But CEOs that are working in organizations, I've heard numbers that are, a CEO should really stay in the organization, say 5 years to, 8 years. And then it's really time to make a change. What's your perspective on that theory?
Well, I mean, I don't buy that, right? And here's why. Because, longevity has a place. Let's think of some of the real rock stars who have been outstanding CEOs. I mean, if they flipped over after 5, 6 years, the company would not be where it is today, right? And but here's what I think is important. I think the CEO has to continually be getting better. So, the CEO that started 5 years ago, they have to be a lot better now than they were 5 years ago in terms of their skills, their abilities, and how respected they are as leaders, and they got to be green and growing. They got to continually develop themselves, and that's so important, right? So if they do that, why not keep them? You're absolutely right, though. The average tenure of a CEO, is 5 years, I think that's the Fortune 500 sort of 5 year flip. And I mean, I just don't buy into that. I think as long as the CEO is continuing to get better at being a CEO, they can continue to earn the job.
When it comes to evaluating yourself as a CEO, which all CEOs should be doing, a little introspection, and really understanding, where you are in your position as well. And if we use the analogy, the emperor who had no clothes, how does the CEO know that maybe it's their time to go? And they should really, start to think about, maybe it's time for me to move on.
Well, I mean, it's a very apt question for a founder, right? Like when is it time? In an organization, big organization, public company, the board of directors is going to take care of that. The shareholders will take care of that usually. But when it comes to the founder, when is the right time? I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I look in the mirror and ask myself that same question, right? I turn 80 in September, and I gotta get the succession question answered. I mean, we just gotta get that answered. Now, I've got a great team around me. I got wonderful people around me. If something happened to me, this afternoon, there's a great group of people that'll make darn sure that CEO Global Network succeeds. By the same token, I mean, I'm pretty active in the business, David, and and I will in the next year be handing that off to somebody else at a number of things that I'm doing. But I'm hoping to be able to do this for to be involved with CEO Global Network for a number of years yet.
Well, not too many people start a business at the age of 67. So congratulations.
No, that's right.
Congratulations on doing that. You mentioned about people that start a business and they build that business. I've had the fortunate pleasure of meeting a lot of entrepreneurs who have built the business and been able to bring the next generation into the business, but they just can't seem to make that transition. I met a great entrepreneur, built an amazing business, had 3 of his children in the business, did the right thing, sent them somewhere else to work somewhere else.
Yep.
They had their education, they had their experience, they came back, and they had a family meeting, who was going to take over. They had designated who was going to take over. It was the youngest out of the 3 children. The eldest was 52. The middle child was 50, and the youngest was 48. And the owner was 75 at the time. And I asked him, I said, so you've done the succession planning, you know who's going to take over. When is it time? And keeping in mind, every one of the children had worked in the business for 20 years at this point, at least 20 to 25 years. He said, they're still too young. They don't know enough.
Yeah, no, that's right.
What,
That's
how
funny.
does that make any sense at all?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. That's a good story. Very good story.
Have you run into that yourself where entrepreneurs they need to go. They've got good people or they've got family members in there, but children will always be your children. And it's very difficult to look at them in another light. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, you're right. It does take, it takes a special entrepreneur to be able to make that transition. I've seen a number of them make it successfully, David, and I've seen some failures, but quite honestly, I've seen more successes, and maybe in some ways it's because I'm seeing CEOs, working with CEOs who have a peer group around them who's checking their backswing. They got a mentor around them who's checking their backswing and ask them the right questions. And so, I've seen some very successful handoffs generation to generation. But I'm also aware where, in cases it doesn't work, right? There's some cases it doesn't work. I think where it does work well though is, whether you got a peer group, mentor or whatever, you do need people in your life, whether it's an advisory board or, who can help a founder, a CEO through that transition and bring some perspective to offset sort of that, your children will always be your children type thing, and get some other eyes on that. Get some other eyes on that can be valuable, eyes that you respect, Yeah, be very important.
And of course, there's also the flip side of that, where you've got children in the business and they need to be transitioned out. I tell a story about an interview that I did, and this lawyer had worked in the business with a lot of family-owned businesses, and he had a son that just had to be fired, and so he invited his son in for a meeting, and he had two hats, and he put the first hat on, and it said "boss" on the hat. It said, "Listen, Mark, things aren't working out. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go." And he immediately took that hat off and he put the hat on that said "Dad." He said, "I just heard the news. You must be feeling awful."
That's funny. That's good.
so we have to, to take those things into perspective. Let's talk about advice for CEOs. You've been at this game since 2008 in working with CEOs. Prior to that, you were at senior levels yourself. What's your best piece of advice for CEOs today, whether they're going through the COVID crisis on the plus or minus side of the equation? What's your best advice for CEOs today?
Well, best advice for CEOs today is ramp up the empathy in yourself. Be more empathetic, okay? And what that means is really be understanding about where people are coming from and what they are dealing with today. It's not just about the numbers. The numbers are important. They're very important. You need healthy numbers to have a successful company, but you need people to have a successful company. And ramp up the empathy. And how do you do that? Listen more, talk less. Listen more, and listen between the lines, because people are struggling. Number two, okay, ask smart questions. Don't just go with the solution. Ask smart questions, okay, to learn more about what's going on with people. And then the third thing, as I mentioned earlier, David, is spend time one-on-one with people, because people are going through a crisis, and they don't all, go through it the way you do. And you need to be sensitive to that. And that's why turning up the volume on empathy is just so critical for leaders today. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, be authentic, be real. Be real. This is a crisis. And, as Tom Peters said, we're going to be remembered forever how we treat people through this crisis. And I really believe that's true. So those are a couple things. And then the other thing is keep learning, keep getting better,
And it's okay to be the quietest, smartest person in the room as well. John,
Absolutely.
a question from our audience. We just celebrated International Women's Day What should corporate leaders be doing to make sure that more females end up in the C-suite, on boards, and as leaders of corporate Canada?
Well, I mean, all leaders need to nurture that. They have to create opportunities. They have to create learning opportunities. They have to create opportunities where people can, really perform and mentor. I mean, I think mentoring and helping people. If I think back to, I mean, I know a number of very successful people that have had great careers. And when you say, what was a major contributor? A major contributor is they had several mentors who, made sure that opportunities were given to them, because there's just a lot of talent. The best management teams, the best boards are the diverse boards, and we just have to get there, David. It's a major opportunity to get there and get there faster.
What you've been around corporate Canada and corporate North America, and well, really corporate globally for a number of years.
Yep.
Over the course of your career, what do you see as the most significant change in business from the start of your career to now? Not just you within yourself, but in business in general.
Boy, that's an interesting question, David. And the major change I would say is the openness. And I mean, I hope everybody on the call sees that. I mean, at way back, if you go back a couple of decades, David, I mean, it was it wasn't an open book. People didn't know as much as they know today about about the strategy, about the vision, about the numbers, so I mean, I think that's a big one, is in terms of the openness. The other thing, of course, is just the need to create opportunities. I mean, we're not going to be successful if we don't create opportunities for more people. And there's tremendous talent. I mean, just focus on Canada. Look at the talent that we have here, and so we have an obligation to create opportunities for that talent. And so that's where diversity and equality, inclusion are so important. And I think that's just a real opportunity for all of us to and that's something that I think if you go back several decades, would not have been front of mind for people.
John, as always, I could sit and chat with you for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, our time is limited this morning, but I do want to thank you for being with us today and sharing your insights. And at this point in time, I'd like to call on one of my other members of my board, Adam Novak, who is a Senior Vice President of Gallagher Insurance, to appropriately thank you. Adam?
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. John, I just have to express what a pleasure it was listening to your story this morning. And while I was listening to it, I was thinking in my head about the CEOs that I've worked for in the past, and their styles and whatnot. And it's just everything you said resonated with me incredibly. At Gallagher, for example, we're a 94-year-old company that was started in Chicago back in, I believe, 1927 or something like that. And frankly, it was started by Arthur J. Gallagher. And we've had a Gallagher as the head of our organization in several generations now. Today, it's Pat Gallagher, I should say. He goes by Pat. And we're a 33,000 employee organization worldwide now. And, the thing about, you were talking about sharing ideas and whatnot. Our business is built on the concept of collaboration, totally. And no one person knows everything. So it's really important that you put together a team that can effectively manage and challenge risk management, insurance, and consultation, where necessary. So, John, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure. I too was invited by Linda Kern to one of the sessions pre-COVID. totally enjoyed it. Met a lot of fantastic people. I look forward to doing more of the same. Thank you, John.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And I do want to thank Kaiser Mason Ball and Gallagher Insurance for sponsorship of our From the Corner office, our C-level series, and their continued support on so many items. John, I'm going to run through a few events that we do have coming up on March 10th. Please join us for Good Morning Mississauga. Good Morning Mississauga is completely virtual. It is the #1 networking event in the city of Mississauga. So join us on March 10th and every second Wednesday of every month throughout the year. It's a great way to book a speaker spot, and you can make over 100 cold calls in just 2 minutes. On March 15th, we have our virtual webinar with Minister Monty McNaughton, the Provincial Minister of Labor. Monty has been, or Minister McNaughton has been in the hot seat on a number of issues over COVID. So be sure to tune in and ask lots of questions there. On March 24th, we're joined with Peel Regional Police Chief and the Mississauga Fire Chief, brand new fire chief at Mississauga that's just been installed over the last few months. We're having a virtual town hall with both of them. They're both part of the Peel Region and COVID task force. So if you have questions for the police chief or the fire chief, join us on March 24th. On March 26th, join us for our virtual town hall with all of our Mississauga MPPs. Lots of discussion there, of course, with Mississauga moving into the gray zone rather than red. By March 26th, I'm sure everybody hopes that we're out of gray zone and into a red zone or better. And also on April the 9th, we have a virtual town hall with the Mississauga MPs, the members of parliament. Those are our federal representatives. Lots of discussion, rumors about an election coming up, lots of discussion about vaccine rollout. So great discussion there. And also on April the 15th, we recognize over 120 nominees in 11 different categories in our business community. This is our 2020, postponed from 2020, our 2020 Business Awards of Excellence. It's MBOT's large signature event recognizing the excellence in business and corporate community. You can register at mbot.com/events. So once again, thanks to our sponsors. John Wilson, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to continue our conversations and maybe even over lunch very, very soon, John. I would look forward to that.
That'd be great.
And also thanks to each and every one of you for joining us today. Hope you got some nuggets of information and something that will help you in your career. That concludes our event today. Thanks to our team in the background, Stephanie and Kelsey, for keeping us on track and making us look so fantastic. Thanks to all of you for attending today, and I wish you continued success in your business.